What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. Now, today on the table in front of us is the Kizer Odin. This knife and I have an interesting history. They started advertising this, releasing images of it way back at the beginning of 2019. I was very excited for it. I was in a real big Kizer phase at that point, and then it just never materialized. We got all the way through Blade Show East in Atlanta in June, still no Kizer Odin, and then it finally dropped. And, my tastes had changed a little bit by then. But here it is on the table, and let's take a look at what you get. It is a big knife. Let's start with that. It really is. Let's take a look. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, and an 1/8 inches of cutting on this S35 VN blade. The overall knife is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 inches long. This is a big knife. And yet, it has a relatively nice and thin profile, which means it doesn't carry like a really big knife. Now, you guys know I like big knives. Of that, there is no question. This knife is interesting because lengthwise, it is a big knife, but it isn't because of the way it's shaped. It is an excellent worker. The blade shape is super fascinating to me. Let's get a couple of things out of the way first. It's not razor blade thin behind the edge, excuse me. I've been fighting a cold now for like 3 weeks. Feels like. But it is relatively thin behind the edge. It has a really nice flat and then some belly. And then it sweeps up to meet this sort of drop here at the nose. It does have a very unique blade shape. In the time that I've had it and used it and carried it, I have come to really sort of enjoy that blade shape. It is very good for everything from big box cutting to small tasks. But because of this belly up here at the front of the blade, you can do relatively good chopping work, for instance. Oh, excuse me. Chopping work, if you want to. It's not perfect. We'll get to those things in just a minute. But basically, this is Kizer, of course, doing what they do best. It is titanium. It is on bearings. It is S35 VN. They do that very well. The knife has a little bit of jimping at the blade, back at the base of the blade here, where it meets the scales. We'll talk about that in a second. It has very nice jimping right here on the lock bar. And again, the action on this thing is very good. Let's go back to that jimping on the blade. I don't know why it's there. I don't. It doesn't really offer any grip. It might kind of tell you where to place your thumb, but because my hands are so big, I just reach out past it anyway when I put my thumb up here. But that's okay. Everything else is chamfered very nicely. There are no real sharp edges. I did notice one. It's right here on the clip. That's very sharp. It's not a hot spot in your hand at all, but it is sharp. The carbon fiber inlays here are very interesting. They've been milled in such a way, let me get a good look at that, as to give this knife a fair amount of texture and grip. This knife speaks to me powerfully of being thought of as a hard-use knife. I don't know that it is, but it definitely rings a lot of the harder-use bells. The design is oriented towards use rather than looks. The texturing on the handles allows you good grip. The blade shape itself has got a very sort of hard-use style to it. A couple of things to be aware of. One, this has, with all due respect to another YouTube channel that I'm sure most of you have watched, a fairly serious pocket pecker in the form of this flipper tab. It has a little bit of jimping at the top, but not much. And really what this is just a really sharp thing sitting in your pocket all day. And that's not great. It's not the end of the world either. The way it does hang in the pocket, as you can see, there's a little bit of edge here to keep that out of the way. But it's definitely something to be aware of. The other thing that I'd like to point out is that this is really not a terrifically deep carry clip. I'll just use a handy piece of paper. When you seat the knife in your pocket, you got about 3/4 of an inch sticking up out of the pocket. Now, that makes a lot of sense in heavier or harder use knives, but this is not that big of a knife. Like I said, it is lengthwise, but overall dimensions, I'd be much happier if this was a full-on deep carry clip. It does have a couple of lanyard holes, and I do say a couple. I don't know if you can see those or not. There we go. It is milled out underneath here, and the titanium backspacer, and the scales so that you can get a piece of lanyard through there, although I think 550 would be a heck of a challenge. This is an interesting knife. I was really looking forward to it when they first started advertising it at the beginning of 2019. However, 2019 was such an amazing year for knives that it takes something at this point pretty special to really catch my eye and make me go, ooh. As much as this is a great knife, and I'm sure Ivan, the designer, put a lot of thought and energy and love into it, it just really isn't the knife for me. It doesn't mean it won't be a knife for you. All of the features of this knife are very, very good. I like it. I don't like it enough to get one for myself, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Let's go ahead and do a size comparison with our old friend, the Rat Model 1. And as you can see, the Odin is bigger. And tons more blade, of course. Just for giggles, here it is against our old friend, the Rat Model 2. Well, yeah, this is a much, much bigger knife. These are selling for around $160 right now. And that is a really good price for these materials, titanium and carbon fiber and S35VN. It is priced exceptionally well. If a sort of hard use styled knife is your jam for daily EDC, if you like a longer blade, this really could be a great knife for you. It does its job very, very well. It is comfortable in hand. Even though we did the full length of the knife, let's take a look at what you get in the grip area. From the flipper tab, you get 1, 2, 3, 4 full inches of space. Now, my hand is about 3 3/4 inches, just under 4. As you can see, there's just a little bit sticking out here, plus the end. As I said, this is a big knife. Yeah, it's really an enjoyable piece. I'm not really sure why I'm not sort of more into it. But that's the thing about knives. Not everything is for everybody. I think this knife has been largely overlooked. I think that a lot of people who would really, really like it haven't had a chance to see it or get their hands on it. And part of that has to do with the absolute flood of knives that have come through the market in 2019. I think that if this had hit as one of only, 10 or 15 interesting knives from the big companies when it landed, I think it would have gotten a lot more positive attention. The other thing that I'd like to remind Kizer of is that when you first advertised this, I was very excited to get one, and then it didn't appear, and I moved on. That happens too. I want to reiterate, there's nothing wrong with this knife. In fact, it's very good in many ways. It's just not really a knife for me. And I'm okay with that. I hope you guys are too. I know I do a lot of sort of fanboy service on this channel for the knives that I love. I think it's important to get a good knife that comes through the channel periodically that just isn't for me. That's what this would be. My feeling is this. If you've seen this thing before and you're interested in it, find one and hold it. It may very well be a great knife for you. It is, by any measure, a good knife. I hope that Kizer continues to do interesting things like this, because even when they aren't for me, I enjoy the way it drives the market. Anyway, we're going to end there. The Kizer Odin, S35VN, titanium, 9 inches overall, 4 inches of cutting on the blade. Excuse me. It is, well, it's just an interesting knife. Feel free to like the video on your way out. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I'd love to have you here on a regular basis. We'll see you next time.